and welcome to this meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee, which has been conducted from the Chamber and, of course, through the Microsoft Teams platform. It's recommended that under the terms of Section 50A4 of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973, the public, including the press, be excluded from the meeting during consideration item 14 on the grounds that exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 7A of the Act is disclosed. I'm ruling items 7D, 15 and 20 as urgent to allow the matters to be considered prior to the next meeting of the committee. I would ask you all to please turn off your microphones and cameras, and before we begin, I'll ask Councillor John Mackay to lead us in prayer. The meeting is now being recorded.
Gracious and ever blessed Lord, we thank Thee for this opportunity of gathering together. And we pray that we would be guided by the God who is the only God who is wise. And we pray, Lord, that we would have that wisdom to conduct our business here on this day. We thank Thee that we can call upon Thee in all our situations and all our circumstances, because there is nothing hidden from Thee. We thank Thee, Lord, that we are able to access Thee through the one on Thy right hand, the Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us and who gave Himself for us, and that whosoever would believe in Him would not perish, and they would have everlasting life. We thank Thee that Thou art unchangeable, Thou art the same yesterday, today, and forevermore, from everlasting to everlasting. Thou art the God, and we pray that we would have a spirit of prayer in our hearts, that Thou would bless us, Lord, as families, as homes, as communities, and that Thou would open the doors of heaven, and that we would see people turning from the power of Satan into Thyself. We pray for that Thou be with us at this meeting on this day. We pray for the chair and vice chair and all the members, and we pray for the officers who will lead us at this time. We thank You for them, and the chief executive. And we pray for our nation, Lord, that Thou would come in a day of Thy power amongst those who lead us in Edinburgh and in London, that we commit them all to Thyself. We pray for those who are ill at this time in hospitals or homes or wherever they are. And we pray that Thou protect us when this pandemic is spreading amongst us once more. O Lord, put Thine everlasting arms around us. Go before us and give us guidance on this day in all that we do. We ask it in Jesus' name and for His sake. Amen.
Thank you, John. Okay, you'll all be well versed in the conduct of the meeting. Just a couple of points to assist the process. If you're a member of the committee attending remotely, please leave your camera on and your microphone off. Officers, please leave both off unless you are called to speak to a report or answer a question. A reminder to those members in the chamber of the queuing system, if you wish to ask a question, please leave your mic in case you wish to come back on the response, and committee members will of course be given priority. In regard to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end the call remotely. And finally, a reminder that the meeting's been live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council's website following the meeting. So we'll now proceed to the formal business on the agenda. First of all, we have the minutes of the meeting of 23rd June 2021 for approval for accuracy. Happy to approve. Thank you. Then declarations of interest. You're invited to declare an interest in any agenda item at this point. If you become aware of an interest during the meeting, then I would ask that you declare it at that time. And when declaring an interest, it would be helpful if members would indicate briefly the nature of that interest. Okay, no interest declarations at the minute. Thank you. Item 3 is, we've now got a series of minutes of meetings. Item 3 is a minute of the meeting of the Community Planning Partnership of 18th March and 1st July for noting. Happy to note. Thank you. Minute of item 4 is the minute of the meeting of the HR Committee of 28th June and 23rd September. Happy to note. Thank you. And item 5 is the minute of the meeting of Local Government Employee Joint Consultative Committee of 9th September 2021. This is for noting and also for approval of the recommendations at 6, 7, 8 and 9. Happy to note and approve. Thank you. And finally, the meeting of the Gaelic Committee for noting and approval. The committee met on 23rd September and the recommendations at 7, 8, 9 and 10 for approval also. Happy to note and approve. Okay, thanks very much for that. We now move on to performance management. The following reports provide an overview of the business plans and related performance issues at the end of the first quarter 21-22. We've got Chief Executive Malcolm Bauer, Norman MacDonald, Paul McCaskill and Ian McKinnon, who will highlight key points and answer questions on their respective remits. So the first one is the Chief Executive's Department and the Corporate Policy and Performance Management Update. Over to Malcolm, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. It's a fairly full report, so I'll just highlight key points. In terms of performance, all the information is there via the links which are referred to in 2.4. So if further detail is sought, the information's there and you can follow up with myself or Catherine McKinnon as required. But in essence, there are 39 business plan actions for the department. 38 out of these are on track. One is showing amber, so that's pretty good. The key performance indicator information is generally across the Comhairle, so that 10 of these are on track and 13 are annual, so there's no concerns there. In terms of updates since we last met in June, new on the scene is Scottish Government's 100 commitments, and these are summarised at 5.3 very, very roughly, and they're reflected, of course, in the draft corporate strategy that we approved for consultation in August, and which we'll come back to you separately on the agenda. In terms of performance, I would just refer you to 6.1. It looks like jargon, but it's not. It's accountability. We have done a complete review of actions and the key performance indicators to link the actions to the strategic outcomes, and that helps your accountability of what we're doing under the business plans and also what they call the golden thread to measure performance under the corporate strategy. So that too has been reviewed. Moving on to paragraph 7, these are the specific items. Quite a lot of information there on gender pay gap. We continue to improve. We have a target of 10%, and we're continuing to move in that direction. Sickness absence rates, welcome reduction in sickness absence. Of course, that's during the pandemic, but still it's a significant drop. And I think that the work which HR colleagues working with departments and services do has a good effect on that. Leaping through to paragraph 12, European Social Fund programme delivery, there's an update there. Scottish Government has helpfully indicated that the programmes can be extended to June 2023, but we've not formally requested an extension yet. We're not sure if we'll need that or not, but it is a welcome bit of relief. As always, post-COVID, the imperative is to spend and submit the regular claims to draw down the money. Now, there'll be a lot of activity. I think government will be fairly swamped post-COVID, as you can imagine, with programmes picking up again. So that extension is always there in the background. And there's some detail there for your information. 12.2, this is UK Government's funds, Community Renewal Fund and Levelling Up. There's a report on Levelling Up later on the agenda, but just to remind you about the bid we submitted under Community Renewal Fund, that there has been no announcement yet from UK Government. There is talk of an announcement in October, and that would be very welcome. I can't underestimate the pressure that will bring on applicants in terms of a spend by end of March date, and at the moment our information is that it's still to be adhered to. But I think if there is an announcement in October, there will have to be some variation to that. So we hope we're successful with our applications to that fund. Levelling Up, as I said, is later on the agenda. And as you know, UK Government also announced a community ownership fund. That's not for local authorities, that's only for community groups. And hopefully they know we have publicised that. And we will do so again when the next funding round is known, and that's likely to be December. Next section is transport. I'll summarise that very quickly, saying apart from ferries, which is a big apart from, the most significant piece of work we have is ensuring that our transport needs are not left out of funding streams. We're in a difficult position because our submissions were, as they say, sifted out of STPR2, the Strategic Transport Projects Review, but it's not clear if they'll fall within the island's connectivity plan either. Now, we need to be somewhere. Our transport needs are as valid as those of any other part of Scotland, and apart from our constant work on the ferries, which Councillor Robertson leads through Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, these are that is a real priority, and I will follow that up with the committee's permission at ministerial level and with our MSPs to ensure that our needs are met there. A lot on energy, which I will leave to others to highlight, but note 12.11, discussions are still ongoing with Marine Scotland around regional marine planning powers. That's very encouraging, all on track there. So there's an update on all of these matters. Public services, finally, I won't talk about because you had the presentation on National Care Service last week, and thank you for your endorsement of the positions which we will develop for the consultation response. Finally, the department's finances are in good order. So that's our key tasks are set out there, and obviously those link with the corporate strategy, which we'll consider at the next item. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much, Chief Exec. Anybody got any questions or comments? Gordon Murray.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, Chair. Councillor Gordon Murray, Stornoway North. I just want to draw your attention to section 9.1, the financial performance, and I'd like to ask, it says that the department is forecast as coming in on budget, but is there not a saving for a strategy officer after the appointment of the Eilean Deal Programme Director?
Mr. Bird.
I can't say more than the department is forecast to come in on budget, because this is a Q1 report. It is, as the report says, indicating high expenditure, and we have a significant savings figure of about 11% of our total budget to meet over the 2 years, which we believe we will. All vacancy savings will go towards that collective end, but the savings from that post, I anticipate, will be required for what the Comhairle has to contribute to the administration of the island's deal. So I would not want to raise any hopes that that would manifest itself in a saving, but that will become clear in time for the budget setting next year.
Councillor Murray.
Thanks, Chair. Would it not be good practice that if any savings that have arisen should be reported to the committee, because the council might, or the Comhairle might, have different priorities to use these savings? I mean, if these savings are earmarked by the department, who's earmarked them, and on what authority have they earmarked these?
I'm not sure I understand your question, but Mr. Bird, do you want to?
Well, as I've said, this is a report from Q1. That vacancy only became apparent, I think, after the end of Q1. So these matters will be reflected in the report to the December series of meetings. It's not for any department to earmark savings or put them aside, but it is for the department to say what is required for the running of its service. As I said in my presentation, I think 2 series ago on the island's deal, if you will the end, you will the means. We have to contribute to our third to the share of the island's deal administration, and that cannot, unfortunately, in my view, it cannot come out of the funding for the growth deal. Both governments are very clear on that. The councils which comprise the deal community must meet these costs, and those have to be shared a third among Orkney and Shetland and ourselves. So at the moment, I have no budget at all to devote to these costs. A saving has arisen due to the successful appointment of one of our employees to the programme director post, and all I'm saying at the moment is that sum would cover or would assist in covering the costs of our contribution to the islands deal, and that is probably what I'll be recommending to you. But that is for the budget setting meetings to determine. But we will have to, if the costs are not met from that source, they will have to come either from elsewhere within the department or from other budgets within the Comhairle.
Okay. Any other comments or queries? Sorry, Charlie, Councillor Charlie Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report, Chief Executive. Since it is a kind of update as such, is there anything, Chief Executive, come through in regards to the proposal of having the under-22 ferry scheme? As you know, there was a decision to introduce an under-22 bus scheme throughout Scotland, and that we put in points of information in regards to trying to get a scheme for the ferry for our young people in the islands and in the other islands as well. Is there anything come through on that under the last month or so under the performance from Scottish Government? Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, I can ask Uishan or Angus to respond to that. I know that just before they speak, we did raise it with Graham Day when he was here, and there was no encouragement. He thought it was too complicated at that stage, but that was an initial reaction. So I don't know where we're at. So Uishan, do you want to update us?
Yes, I have written the ministers on the back of the meeting we had with Councillor Nicholson, but apart from an acknowledgement, we haven't had a formal response yet to that ask.
So we're still pursuing the matter. We haven't had an answer yet, but it is something we'll continue to pursue. Thanks for that. Thank you. Councillor Kenny John MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondered if the Chief Executive would add to his comments on the sifting out of major transport bids and other infrastructure, and the likely time frame when we'll know what exactly is being planned. It's slightly worrying that a government may well ditch it into some of the other islands deal funding bids rather than our own set priorities and simply disregarded, where for other local authorities they certainly take it at a national level.
Okay. Sabad.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pass this question to Angus Murray if I may, but before I do, that is our worry. There is, if we are not to be within strategic transport projects, and that in itself is not an argument we've given up on, then there must be some other provision, because by any standards, as we all know, the Western Isles constitute a region under the old local government regime, and regional councils were responsible for roads. The length of our roads, the dependency we have on these networks is massive, and yet the Comhairle, as one of the smallest local authorities and one with the most straitened finances, is required to maintain all of these facilities. And it's not just roads, of course, it's ports and all the rest of it. So this is an argument that we really have to pursue, but Angus Murray is more expert than I in that process.
Angus, do you want to give some feedback to Kenny John MacLeod?
Thanks, Chair. I'd be wary of the term expert, but anyway, as we put a report up in March, of course, of this year, where we were notifying members that projects or significant transport developments for islands were being sifted out of STPR2, and these included local roads unless they provided access to a key port or airport, and there's no guarantee that any of our ports, for example, would be key ports. So that would knock that out. Inter-island ferry routes which do not form part of the CHFS or NIFS network, island-to-island fixed links, air services, funding, concessionary travel, including public transport fares, air discount and road equivalent tariff schemes, and digital connectivity. These are all being scoped out or sifted out of STPR2. Now, we were told at some point that these might be included in the island's connectivity plan. However, the dialogue between us and Transport Scotland, and indeed any other island authority, I think, at the moment, has been nil. So we're not absolutely clear what's going to be in the island's connectivity plan, and we would welcome greater dialogue with Transport Scotland about that. We do also intend to have a fixed link seminar at some point this year, and we would be inviting Transport Scotland to come and speak to us about some of these matters.
Thank you, Angus. Houston, do you want to come in?
No, it's just to confirm what Angus has said. We have written a number of times on this particular issue. We have pressed them a number of times, but we have a meeting with Transport Scotland on Monday, and we have asked for the island's connectivity plan to be discussed. We did discuss it at the last meeting, but there was not a lot of details because a lot of work has still to be done on it, but we will discuss it on Monday and report back if that's helpful.
Okay, it is an area for concern, so we will look forward to a report back from you, Houston, on that one. Convener?
Thank you, Chair, and this is probably more appropriate to the Transportation Committee in terms of resolving it. But I just get a wee bit concerned about the state our roads are going to be if we have a hard winter this year with frost. And the other thing I'd like is to see happening is that the people who go out with a spray tin with a light blue colouring on it that just denotes patches for repair. 3 times that's been done since the beginning of the summer, and none of them, or very few of them, have been cut and patched to make the road more serviceable. And you can see it just about everywhere on the roads, and that could be a really major issue for us if our roads start failing as a result of a hard frost and a severe winter in terms of snow and ice.
True. I think we'll come back to that through transportation, but it is a potential issue for us. Okay, Councillor Carl Macmillan.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Council Leader. It's to do with Angus, and it's slightly off topic, but it's when I heard there that we're having a seminar on fixed links, could the scope of that be included for the Benbecula to Skye link as well, so that we are Transport Scotland connected to the rest of the world, or that the rest of the world is connected to us, I would have to say.
Okay.
If that could be put into the scope, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's no problem. Thanks for that. Okay, can we move on then to the second item, which is by the Head of Accountancy and Exchequer Services, Norman, and it's about Strategic Finance, Accountancy and Exchequer Services, again, Q1 performance monitoring. Norman, do you wish to add or summarise?
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have much to add, to be honest. The nature of our business plan really revolves around budget cycle, account cycle, and also, the usual monthly and weekly payment cycles. So things are generally going according to plan.
Yeah.
In terms of the accounts and the audit, we would normally have expected to have the account signed off this week. The deadline for signing off has been extended again this year because of COVID till the end of November. So we had the clearance meeting last week with the auditors, and we're hoping that there'll be
Okay, we'll come back to Norman. If we can move on to the third. Oh, yeah, Norman. Okay, you're back in. Sorry, you dropped out there, Norman. Okay, can we go to item D, Performance Management 2021 Q1 around investment delivery? Ian McKinnon provides this report. Ian, can I go to you?
Yes.
Chairman.
Hold on a second. What is it, Ray?
Sorry, it was under 7B.
Sorry?
7B.
Yeah, we're coming back to 7B. He just
He's
got
coming
frozen out.
back.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Okay. Okay, Ian.
Good morning, all. Yes, thanks very much. In terms of investment delivery, revenue expenditure at the end of Q1 is pretty much affected, not a significant amount for us, but it's being managed carefully in any event. Following the normal format, the appendix to the report summarises progress for the 4 main projects we're currently working on. First of those is Goat Hill. Construction works are progressing well. Members will be aware of the constraints in the supply of certain materials and how they are resulting in a risk to a delay to the completion of the works. It's not likely to be significant, and as indicated in the report, the associated assessment is being undertaken by the project manager through the contract. We will, of course, continue to report any relevant updates through the investment delivery to the Comhairle through this committee. In terms of the Barra project, a major reassessment exercise is being undertaken. There's a concurrent report at item 20, so we can discuss that in more detail then. The Lochmaddy project, the retendering of the main works contract following the termination of the previous contract with Eilean Keating. The retendering of the works is currently ongoing with us evaluating tenders received. The outcomes of this will enable us, in collaboration with colleagues at Transport Scotland, to complete the final business case and a revised funding model and agreement. That's scheduled to be considered by Transport Scotland's Investment Decision-Making Board at the end of November. Assuming we can secure the necessary approvals from that forum, we should be in a position to award the contract by the end of December this year. That means that we'll be able to start construction in February 2022 and completion will be scheduled for February 2023 after. Benadrove project, construction works are progressing well with the contractor performing well under difficult circumstances. There is a brief summary in the appendix and you'll be aware of the concurrent report at item 12 which seeks the Comhairle's approval for additional funding which would enable an increase in landfill capacity. I'm happy to take any questions on any of these projects at this time. Sure.
Thank you for that, Ian. Anybody got any questions about any of these 4 projects? I know we'll come on to the Barra project later in the agenda. Everybody happy to accept that report? Noted. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ian.
Chair.
Sorry.
I just wonder if Norman's fallen foul to Operation Warrior that's taking place both in the Mention and on the West Coast. I mean, that very few people in our community have any access to broadband whatsoever, and they do it every year. They come up here, and I just wonder if that's maybe what's happened to Norman's connection.
So shall we task our Chief Executive to contact the Armed Forces immediately? We should ask the question. Certainly, it is. I mean, it might be in jest, but it is a fact that it does break up during this time. Yep. So, can we get Norman back in? Okay, Norman, you were just telling us that you're ready to get the accounts signed off our end. So when do you anticipate that happening?
Yes, Chair, sorry for that. The connection just dropped. We're hoping that the accounts will go to a special meeting of audit and scrutiny in October. So we're on target to get that completed.
Excellent. Got the question here from Councillor Ray Mackenzie.
Thanks. Not on your committee, Chairman. Yeah, the question, I better not say that it's the most important post in the council, but I'll be getting the bullet myself from the Chief Executive, I'll say that, but we don't have a Director of Finance, and I wonder what the situation is regarding this post, which is vital as far as I'm concerned, as far as a lot of people no doubt are concerned. So what is the prospect of getting a Director of Finance fairly quickly?
Okay, do you want to update us?
I think,
put on your mic.
Chair, I think we spoke about these matters in the special meeting of the Comhairle in August, which approved the consultation report on restructuring, and I'll address that in the in the report which goes to the special meeting now that the consultation has closed, when we can look at the structures and talk about the posts as a whole, if that's acceptable.
Yep, arrangements are in hand to address that particular issue, and we should have a solution, as you say, at the next meeting. Consultation is concluded. Nobody underestimates the significance of the role.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other queries for Norman? Are you happy to take his report? Thank you very much then, Norman. Thank you. And then we move on to, we have one internal audit from the Chief Internal Auditor. Again, Q1 Performance Management Report. And have we got Paul? Paul's not in the call. Is there anything particular there? Are you still with us, Norman?
Still here, thanks.
Yeah, just in terms of the, is there anything you would want to highlight in terms of the internal audit report?
I don't think. I think Paul will have been through most of these progress at the actual audit and scrutiny committee yesterday anyway.
Yeah, nothing. There's nothing.
Yes, Chair, there were no questions from audit and scrutiny about the internal audit work plan, and the report I don't think reveals any matters of concern.
Okay. So our members are happy to note these 4 reports as they've been presented. Thank you very much. We now move on to governance. Item 8, the draft corporate strategy 22-27. It's a report by the Chief Executive. The report's looking for approval of the draft corporate strategy from 2022 to 27, which has been updated to reflect the comments received during the period of consultation. The corporate strategy 17-21 was approved in December 17, and you recall it was refreshed in August last year, focusing on recovery and renewal. It's important that a revised corporate strategy is in place in time to support the new business plans, which will be presented alongside the budget in February next year. The development of the new corporate strategy 22-27 takes account of the effects of the COVID pandemic and of other external factors such as Brexit. But it's important that ambition for the next 5 years is not solely defined by these current volatile external factors. There may well be opportunities that arise from the current situation and some impacts, but the Council's ambitions must reflect the long-term needs of all the communities of the Western Isles. The Chief Executive will highlight, perhaps you can limit yourself to the changes to the draft since August. We presented this in August, and you've presumably updated to reflect any changes since then. Over to you, Chief Executive.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We commenced consultation following the approval of the Comhairle to consult on a new draft corporate strategy in August, and we received 6 responses. And those, the suggestions and further narrative, largely around Gaelic, of course, as I advised in August, we recognised it was a bit light on Gaelic input. It wasn't light on commitments, but we needed to enhance the strategy in that area. Just to emphasise the leader's comments, I think it is important that our business plans for next year are not wholly around COVID and Brexit. Those are and will be and were very important when we refreshed the corporate strategy last year to take account of COVID, but it doesn't define everything for the next period. And just for the record, this strategy is, of course, for the new Comhairle to accept, applaud, amend, discard in whatever way it wishes in accordance with its own political aspirations. But I don't think it is right that the business plans are begun in an atmosphere of what was essentially resilience planning, albeit looking towards recovery and renewal. So to turn to the corporate strategy, the main changes are throughout the document. They enhance reference to Gaelic. They also make on page 6, for those of you who are following it there, we've put in additional parts about renewable energy, particularly hydrogen developments, community-owned wind power, of course. Also a bit on community wealth building, to which we are already committed. What is now called as a policy area, community wealth building, I think about 80% of it was in our policy
ambitions anyway, but we have referred to that, and particularly to working with the Centre for Local Economic Strategies. That's the new government body that will assist in that area. Further reference to care experience, children and young people, and corporate parenting. Of course, further emphasis on population and demographics, reference to the National Care Service consultation, as you would expect. And we have added Gaelic to the strategic outcomes of the island's deal, emphasising it in our strategies and plans, and of course emphasising the population points. Specific references to digital inclusion, page 14, to Gaelic medium childcare and preschool education, and to Gaelic First. I think those are the, and in public policy, we've put in 2 paragraphs at the beginning to emphasise our commitment to the Gaelic Language Scotland Act of 2005, recognising the challenges to Gaelic at present, but also the opportunities, both social and economic. Strategic measures, page 20, we've enhanced the performance measurement aspect to read as follows, and this links to what I said in my own presentation. Services will develop operational measures to support the strategic outcome and report their progress through the business plans. So there'll be annual reporting, of course, of the Gaelic language plan as usual, but the reporting of operational measures to deliver these strategies will be through the business plans. In other words, through the service committees, which is where they should be, and through this committee for corporate matters. So those are the amendments to the draft in August, which was well received by consultees. I mean, we did six responses to the consultation. You might think that's not very many, but that's about right for a corporate strategy. It tends to be organisations, institutions, the Improvement Service, Board na Gaelic, NHS who respond to these documents, and they did, and we've taken on board a lot of what's been said. So to move back to the report, I commend this strategy to you for the remainder of this term of the Comhairle, to support the business plans and to reflect a post-COVID environment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So this is the original one, updated to reflect consultation from input from partners. And so we've got recommendation for approval of paragraph 3.1. Gordon Murray.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief Executive. I'm still of the opinion that I believe that this should be left for the new council.
We've been through that one. That's
I will be putting an amendment to full council on that again. I want to ask, were there any community councils that responded to the consultation? And second point is, in the strategy itself, it talks about our ambitions. So who is the our referring to if the council hasn't been elected yet?
The council has been elected. As far as I know, I was elected, and we're all elected in here.
Yeah, but whose ambition? It's a corporate strategy for 22-27. Yeah. Whose ambitions are there?
Council's ambitions.
Who the councillors?
If you don't know who the council is by now, you've got serious issues.
Can you clarify, Chair?
We are.
Is it your ambitions for the 22-27?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Do you want to just, were the community councils involved? Do you want to just clarify that for Mr. Murray?
I'm hoping Norma Skinner is on the call, is in the meeting rather. Here she is.
Norma.
Norma will advise, Ms Skinner will advise if...
Councillor Murray was inquiring as to any interaction with community councils.
Yes, we sent it to all the community councils and asked for any feedback. We didn't have any feedback from the community councils, but we did have feedback from some community sectors, including the Galston Estate and third sector Hebrides.
Good, thank you for that. Councillor Nicholson, is it? No, yeah. Charlie Nicholson, Charlie.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point in regards to the strategy. Crofting, I'm not seeing it mentioned in the corporate strategy, Chair, unless I've missed it. I think it's important that it should be kind of highlighted more, but maybe I missed it. But can we check that it is within the strategy? Chair, please.
Okay, thanks for that input, and we'll leave it for the Chief Executive to have a look at that and amend if appropriate. Okay, we happy with that? Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie. No, is that just Charlie's hands to it? Oh, Councillor John Orman MacLeod.
Thank you,
Do you have
Chair.
a similar point?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Yes, it is along the lines of what Charlie was saying there. So, personally,
Okay.
I relate, and I thought it would be in the corporate strategy, crofting, especially how important crofting is going to be in the next few years. So I'd really like to see it in there. So I don't know, what does that mean? Does it mean having to amend it once again? I'm not sure. Thank you.
Okay, we would happy to delegate it to the Chief Executive to reflect appropriately any priorities around crofting that should be included. We happy with that?
Chair, I'm happy to look at it, but I can certainly assure members that corporate strategies contain generally wider headings such as resilient communities and qualities of life and sustainable economic development. Now, clearly, given this Comhairle's commitment to crofting and indeed other Indigenous industries, that's assumed. I can assure members of that, and it is there are clear aspirations there and indeed commitments to support resilient communities, quality of life, and sustainable economic development, as well as culture and traditions. Now, crofting comes under all of these, so members need have no concern because crofting is a policy commitment of this council in any case.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody got Councillor Ray McKenzie?
Yeah, just a couple of things, a couple of points that you made yourself and the Chief Executive. It's not a problem. I don't have a problem with the draft corporate strategy as such, and I think it's more the question of, and I think that's maybe what was being implied, who decides when. And I think it says in the report somewhere about the draft corporate strategy was for the previous period, 2017 to 2022, was decided in December 2017, presumably. Now, that was decided, therefore, on that basis by the new council. And, you know, if we're taking a decision now, we're deciding on behalf of the next council, and they might.
This is reasonably straightforward. The last council came in, there was a corporate strategy in place when it came in.
Yeah.
When Councillor Murray joined the council, there was a corporate strategy in place. When he left the council, there was a corporate strategy in place. When he joined again, there was a corporate strategy in place. When he leaves just now, there'll be a corporate strategy in place. And if he comes back in,
Can I finish with?
Yeah, just to explain to you though, the December 17 just is a good example of why we should have something in place. That if they managed to do a new corporate strategy or a refresh in December next year, that's over a year away from now. So, as responsible councillors and members, we should have one in place. Well, a new council can do what it likes with it, as has been made clear. Okay, right, on you go.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. I appreciate. You know, that's what you feel about it. I just feel that it should actually be up to the new council. And, you know, you don't have to wait till December 2022 to do it. The new council coming in could take the decision. Anyway, that's an argument for later, I suppose.
Just to clarify, the new council coming in will take a decision. It'll either adopt this or it'll say we're going to change it shortly or we're going to amend it.
Which means they'll have to suspend standing orders or within a year?
No, I think we've been through this.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Sorry, the second thing.
Well, the second point is really the conclusion here, which is, on the first sentence, the development of a new corporate strategy for 22-27 seeks to provide a clear strategic direction, potentially for the next 5 years for Comhairle, depending on the political aspirations and views. So, you know, that depends on the views of the council. But the conclusion also, I think, mentions the 6 was it 6 representations have been made. Now, a lot of community councils will not have met, obviously, for one reason or another. And I don't know if they're interested or not. I'm not saying that they're all going to come rushing in once they start meeting again, but it may be there's no interest, from these points. But that might influence the number of consultations. Now, I don't know how wide. You mentioned, or the Chief Executive mentioned, one was, for instance, the National Health, Western Isles Health Board, and other major bodies like that, which obviously does make a difference, and maybe one's community association.
I'm assuming, Chief Executive, that we consulted with the range of bodies that we normally consult with each time we do a corporate strategy.
Yes, that's correct, Chair, and we did, and we did not receive any responses saying please give us a little more time. To which we would have responded, I'm sure, pretty positively.
Well, I can only speak on behalf of one constituency one community association, and they haven't met. They haven't met for a year and a half. So, they're not going to be able to take a decision.
I know, but that's fair enough. But yeah. we cannot run the council or corporate strategy on the basis of a community council here or there hasn't met. That, I mean, we have to get on with business. We will welcome any input from them at any time, not just when we go out to consult, but at any time at all. So it is noted, but I think we've gone through the proper procedures in terms of consultation. Okay, can we Councillor Alison MacLeod?
Thank you, Leader. What I'd like to say, I'd like to commend the Chief Executive and his team of officers.
Yep.
It's a very comprehensive document, and they've gone through the consultation process. Whether people were bothered or not, that's up to them entirely. But I think it's a comprehensive roadmap for the future. And as you say yourself, it can be amended if circumstances change. That's the essence of a corporate.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we've gone. Convener.
Thank you, Chair. Just to try and close this up. This is a draft corporate strategy, and community councils and public bodies and others will be far more interested in the strategy when the new council comes in than a council that is within a short few months going to be changing in a significant way. So I think it's really important that we recognise that it's after the new council is appointed that will take place.
Okay, thanks for that. Can we move on now? Are you happy to? There's a recommendation for approval at paragraph 3.1. Happy to approve. Thank you for that. Item 9 is Island Community Impact Assessments, and a report by the Chief Executive. It's looking to establish procedures to ensure that ICIAs are undertaken and implemented in respect of council policies, strategies and services. The report sets out the requirements of the new duties on the council, outlines the duties on Scottish ministers to prepare ICIAs and to consider requests for retrospective ICIAs made by councils. A very important feature that's emerged in the last number of years. And so we want to get it right. Chief Executive, do you want to speak to the report?
Very briefly, Chair. It's quite a complex report, and it's full of governance, and that governance is important. But I'm not expecting members to feel responsible for every aspect of the legislation and the duties under it. But it's important it's set out, and it is set out for your information largely in paragraphs 6 and 7. And 8, because the purpose of this report is to agree processes as to how we will fulfil the duties of the Island Scotland Act. We, the Comhairle, will fulfil these duties. But it also, of course, rightly refers to duties of other people, mostly Scottish ministers in our context, since that's our dominant agency, perhaps. Sets out their duties to prepare ICIAs for all changes to policy, strategy and service, and we will see that coming through as we have hitherto, sometimes to a greater or lesser degree. We'll see it come through principally with the National Care Service, but to refer back to the Transport report, we will be looking for an ICIA for these decisions as well. There's also an important bit about retrospective. The Comhairle may make a request to Scottish ministers to do a retrospective Island Communities Impact Assessment, and at the December series I will be submitting a short list to you recommending which policy areas we would ask Scottish ministers to do that, and I'm sure some of them are already all in your mind. But the appendices to this are really what we're looking for approval here. There's a template for our staff and ourselves to fill out when we are doing something as a council. We have to consider the effect across all of the Western Isles and in communities of the Western Isles, and Appendix B is the guidance that will follow that. Orkney and Shetland are doing similar processes as we are, and as you can imagine, we have conferred about what the best document is. So this is the result of three councils looking at our statutory duties here. So it's a report that's full of information, but it's important in taking forward the Islands Act within the Western Isles. So I commend these recommendations to you.
Thank you. The recommendations approval, Councillor Don Crichton.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the report. I mean, basically, we created this, so it's our duty to implement it and carry out its duties in the law. But can I suggest a number of items that the Chief Executive can add to his list in terms of the retrospective aspects of this bill, which is really welcome and important. And perhaps one of them would be, in terms of transportation, is looking retrospectively at the decision for a one ferry solution to the Stornoway-Ullapool route some 7 years ago or more, rather than the two ferry solution, and the impact that decision has had on our transportation issues over the years. And of course, why can't we have a retrospective assessment of successive Scottish budgets over the last how many years that have seen a reduction in our funding across the board in every service area? We have seen reduction in funding that has impacted on our economy. So it might be worthwhile having a retrospective impact assessment on our central government funding and its reduction over the years. There's also a live current one. We've got the reduction, the ceasing of funding for the Grey-Lag Goose scheme, which will have a severe economic impact, especially in the youth. So I think you should also add that one to the list. But I think it's really important that we take this opportunity seriously in terms of impact assessments, and also that the government take it seriously and use this bill to help us reflect on the impact of some of its decision making over the last decade or so.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Crichton. You'll add these to the list that you're coming back with?
Yes, Chair, just for information, I will be writing round to all members asking for any thoughts and suggestions even about these. I have a few in mind, and I'm sure you can guess what these are. One of them, of course, is the funding formula for Islands Councils. But I'll be writing round the next month or so in preparation for the December report. Okay. Thank you for these comments.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon-Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I'd welcome what Councillor Crichton said about the funding. If a report's brought back on the core and the ring-fenced funding as well, the totality of the funding that the Scottish Government has given the Council. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we'll get that back, because there's always an issue around the fact that we don't have flex. We've only got flex around 20% or something of the funds that we get. So it'd be good to have a look at that split, see the impacts. Thank you for that, Councillor Murray. Councillor McCormack.
Thank you very much, Leader. I just wish to refer you to paragraph 8.3, where it says that the Scottish Government is to give their approval in writing of the request or give reasons for not approving the request. That strikes me as utterly bizarre. You know, I mean, we make a request, How can you possibly turn it down? And basically what they're saying is that we can spend hours and hours and hours putting our requests together, send it into them, and then they just say, no, I'm going to witness it. Surely there's something wrong with that.
I'm sure Mr. Bird will be happy to speak to that. It was a contentious issue and has been.
It was a very contentious part of the negotiations on the bill that became the Act, because the original draft only required ministers to consider the matter in 3 months and then confirm their approval or the refusal. The compromise which we were able to secure and which was approved by the Scottish Parliament by 1 vote is Part B, that ministers must give reasons for not approving the request, and that was the best that could be done in order to flush out reasons within the Islands Act for not approving the request. Previous the bill as drafted simply had a yes no with no requirement. So that was as you've anticipated a pretty contentious part of the bill.
Okay, that's where we're at with it, unfortunately. But yeah, I remember these discussions, and we were some of us were calling for an independent third party to make that decision rather than government just turning around. But having got them to a position where they have to give a good reason, that'll help. And if they do deny a request, they have to give us the reasons, and that may open up other avenues. That's where we're at. Okay. Any other queries, questions on this one? Or are we happy to agree the recommendations, paragraph 3.1?
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're on to item 10, which is the island governance structures for the growth deal. So this is not about the growth deal itself, but about the governance structures in place for it. It's looking for approval of governance proposals for the growth deal for the islands and provides an update on the current status of the growth deal. It's proposed to enter into a formal agreement to govern the administration and functions of the Joint Committee. A draft governance agreement is at Appendix 1 in the report. Approval of these proposals and the nomination of myself and 1 additional member to the Joint Committee is now being sought from the 3 island councils in order for the Joint Committee to meet at the earliest opportunity. Malcolm will speak to the report. There are recommendations at A, B, C and D, and in respect of recommendation C, I would move that, just like Orkney Council have done, we appoint the leader, myself, and the chair of Development Committee as representatives on the Islands Growth Deal Joint Commission. But I'll leave Malcolm to go through the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have much to add to that introduction. This is simply to put in place the governance structure for the growth deal. There are various models, and you'll recall a report in March which set out the models that were on offer. The Joint Committee is felt by all to be the best solution for a council for a growth deal like ours, with 3 councils being part of it. I'd refer you to 6.1. It's not just, of course, about the Joint Committee. There's already the Programme Management Board that meets monthly. That's quite a very effective body, and we can invite others onto that, but not as voting members. There's the Advisory Forum for all of the sectors affected by and who would benefit from the deal, and of course there'll be local programme boards. That's for each island area. The finance directors need to meet, of course, and there'll be a legal and governance group from time to time just on the processes. We are the lead authority, and that brings with it certain responsibilities, and those are set out at 7.2. We employ the programme director and anyone else appointed by the Joint Committee, and we have to organise the provision of admin, professional and technical support services. Now that's on a third basis. Of course, we're not bearing all the responsibility there, but as I noted in response to an earlier question, that funding cannot come out of the deal monies. That's unusual and for funding like this, but both governments have made that very clear for every deal in every area. So we have to bear that cost ourselves. But the main issue here is asking you to approve the creation of a joint committee in terms of the appendix to the report, to delegate powers to me through the programme board to finalise and approve the governance agreement,
to nominate, as the leader has proposed, representatives from among members to the board, to the joint committee, and finally to delegate authority to that committee to approve its own subsidiary documents. That's the financial regulations, the standing orders, etc., as you would expect. So that's those are the recommendations. I think this is, we're keen to do this as soon as possible, because we're keen to have the first meeting of the joint committee as the deal process moves towards conclusion of the outline business case process. We're doing very well against that, despite reduced resources across all the three councils. So that's moving forward quickly. But for anything to be approved, that needs to be through the joint committee, and that has to be constituted. So these recommendations are commended to you.
Okay, folks, happy to agree the recommendations. Alison MacLeod?
Yeah, it's been in the words the Beatles song, from a long and winding road. But I'm really glad we've arrived here at this point. You can almost see the benefits that little. I fully commend the work that's been done here, because it's a long time. It's been worth it. I would support the recommendation. Should be nominated this.
That's just to have a consistent approach across the three island groups. I should have asked you, of course, before I said, are you happy to do that? Okay.
I was just wondering,
sorry, Ken.
Did you require a nomination and
no, just present, that's fine. Okay, happy to agree recommendations 3.180D. Thank you very much. Item 11 is the island bond consultation. Again, a report from the Chief Executive. It provides details of the island's bond consultation and seeks approval of the Council's draft response as the basis of a final response to the consultation, and that be submitted before the deadline date of the 24th of next month. The island's bond will be subject to an ICIA, as referred to earlier, and its launch is due in spring next year. In very general terms, the Council welcomes initiatives which look to address population retention and growth in the islands, and would anticipate having a key role in how and where financial incentivising programmes such as the islands bonds should be targeted locally. Retaining and increasing an economically active population and enabling the social and economic conditions to facilitate that is obviously a key ongoing Council priority. So the Council's initial and draft responses at the feedback form appended to the report, and it's proposed that the Chief Executive, in consultation with the Director for Communities, finalise the draft response and submit it before the deadline date of 24th October 2021. Angus Murray will speak to the report and answer any questions. Angus, do you want to contribute at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Just briefly to say that the Director for Communities and myself met with the Islands team this week. And it is clear that the bond is at an early stage of development. A number of our questions could not really be answered definitively at the meeting, but it is a consultation process. And the Islands team have actually committed to a workshop with the Comhairle in the next month or so, and also further engagement with local stakeholders. But in the meantime, if members have, or if members feel that there's anything missing from the draft response, we'll be happy to incorporate as appropriate. Thanks.
Okay, and members communicate that to you.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Councillor Donald Craig.
Thank you, Chairman. I think while we have a duty to respond to this formal consultation, I think we should use the opportunity to perhaps to put forward some more imaginative ideas rather than a patronising policy of a £50,000 bond. So on the one hand, the government is putting forward this, and at the same time, the prospect of removing quality jobs from the islands through their hard-headedness and hard-heartedness with the standoff regarding the Eilean situation. Can we suggest, perhaps in this consultation, that this money, this £5 million spread across this Parliament, can we not suggest that that is distributed among local authorities who would be best placed on how to attract and to retain young people, our population in our own islands, like using the money to fund our proposed employability hub, and also perhaps use it to address some of the housing needs. I think we should make very clear in the consultation that there are better ways for using this money than just giving £50,000 handouts in the hope that people will move back to the islands. There are more imaginative ways to use this money. I think we should make that clear in the consultation.
Angus, you got that?
Yes, Chair, I heard that. And the only thing I would say, since the question that we did ask at the meeting was, this is confined to capital, which is kind of restrictive. So, for example, it wouldn't be able to assist local businesses to take on apprentices, for example. So at the moment it's confined to capital. It's a capital fund. Now, whether that's going to change or whether there's going to be any latitude on that, we don't know.
Would house building come under capital?
Yes, it would. We did make the point that 50,000 or up to 50,000 wouldn't really, make much of a dent in. It might fund a modest renovation of a certain type of dwelling. It certainly wouldn't be able to build a house, and then you're into more complex matters such as shortfalls and mortgages and first-time buyers, that kind of thing. So it is quite a complex situation. I mean, I do agree with Councillor Crichton that 50,000 is a bit of a drop in the ocean, and in fact, it might not even be 50,000, depending on the strength of applications. It could be less, it could be 30, 20. So forth. The other thing is, the likelihood is that it's going to be incredibly oversubscribed because the islands team weren't able to say whether this would be UK wide or not. It may well be UK wide, but it is Scottish Government money. Thanks.
But Chairman, if I could come back, this local authority's share of that £5 million over the 5 years of this Parliament, we could, design some sort of funding programme that would be imaginative and address some of, for example, the housing needs that are current.
Okay, thanks for that. So Councillor Crichton's basically saying that we got hold of this money ourselves to apply it to housing, we could do it more targeted capital, yeah. Councillor Angus McCormack and then Councillor Kenny John McLeod. Councillor McCormack.
Thank you very much, Leader. Well, you know what my view of this matter is.
No, do tell.
Well, you haven't been reading your papers. And this yet another example of the Scottish Government trying to tell us what to do, which is most regrettable. I do wish that they would get this notion out of their heads that they must tell us what to do all the time. Why don't they just give us the resource, if they have a resource to give us, and allow us to use it to best purpose? I think we're very good at doing that, actually. We've been very successful in the past at spending monies when we've had the monies. And the biggest problem we have at the moment is we just do not have any money to invest in our young people. We would love to do that. And as Councillor Crichton makes the point, to give a young person or young family £50,000, which is restricted to capital expenditure, it's just going to make life really, really difficult for them, I think. It's not really going to advantage them at all. If you really want to help somebody with accommodation, you have to really give them big bucks. Otherwise, they're just not going to get anywhere at all. When you consider that our housing market here has been so disrupted by people coming in and paying huge sums of money for houses which are not worth what they're paying for them, we have to get back to a sort of normalcy in our islands where our young people can afford to have their own accommodation. I do wish they would bring back the crofting grants and loan scheme that existed when I was building my house, which was a most advantageous scheme and which involved young people in building their own houses, which was a great thing. I have a great affection for my house and a great attachment to it, which is a bit weird, I suppose. But I think people who have gone through the process of helping to build their own house feel that way about it. This is just not the way to go about it. And I do wish that the Scottish Government would actually listen to what local people have to say. They really have an issue with control.
Come on, Angus, get off
and it's just quite ridiculous, really. They should trust us. And yet, every policy that seems to come out of Edinburgh is one of control. A national care service, for example, is another example of that. So I think in responding to this, we really need to make the case that we are perfectly capable in the islands of running our own show. Just give us the money and we'll do it.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm sure Angus has got that due recorded in terms of, if there is funds available, in line with what Councillor Crichton was saying, are there more suitable ways of spending it, suitable solutions that we know about here locally? Councillor Kenny John MacLeod.
Thank you, Leader.
And then Councillor Paul Finnegan.
As you will recall, Leader, there was a good discussion about the need to have flexibility from government in the way that we apply the finances that are made available to us to be directed towards housing. We're always encouraged to be joined up in our thinking at a local level, but sadly, government itself is not always joined up in its thinking in the way that it deals with its own priorities and fails to do that joined up. We often see it in crofter housing as opposed to other housing as if they were different and different people we're dealing with. I would hope that there would be complementary funding that could be channeled to support some of the flexibility we're seeking from the Cabinet Secretary in housing matters, and that this would be sensibly used and sensitively used, taking cognizance of what are very clear and demanding priorities we have at the national level.
Yep, thank you for that input. Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Finnegan.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had trouble getting the mic on. I was going through it, and one question I wanted to ask was: is there any sort of timescale? So, if they're given this money, do they have to stay on the islands for any length of time, or can they just leave when they decide that they've got their money and move on?
I don't think they've got that level of detail yet, but Angus, do you hear that inquiry?
Thanks, Chair. That's another question we did ask, and in the consultation we've said a minimum of 5 years and perhaps more. But in discussion with the islands team, there was no such stipulation at this stage.
Can I just follow up there? I just would like to say just follow on from what as somebody who came here 20 years ago, I would just like to follow up on what was said by the others, by Donald and Angus. There's much better ways of spending the money than this, and it's just I just think it's a bit mad myself. But anyway, that's my own opinion. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Paul. And next one is Councillor Carl McMillan.
Thank you, Council Leader. I think we should put this date on the wall. I agree with Councillor Crichton and Councillor Angus McCormack. The island, this bond, although something in the right direction, is there any scope for Angus to include the rebooting of the Crofton grant and loan as it was without the means testing, which I thought was a very poor or even a bad and retrograde step in doing that. But I would go further, and one of the things that we have to look at is allowing people to come back to the rural areas and their crofts. And we put through a policy paper last week, which I disagreed with. And I was hoping to put an amendment to Comhairle, but missed the deadline by a few hours. But that's a different matter. So that we can allow temporary accommodation to be funded by this bond as well, where people might be willing to come in. Could that be included so that the temporary accommodation for the first few years of people coming back to the Crofts could be included as they work towards more permanent accommodation. That's something that I'd be grateful if you could look at. Thank you.
Thanks, Colm, and Angus will take a note of that one. Councillor John Mitchell, then Councillor Alison MacLeod.
Thank you, Leader. John Mitchell, Harrison, South Lochs. I have to say I disagree entirely with Councillor McCormick. It seems to me that he moans when money doesn't come from Scottish Government and he moans when money does come from Scottish Government. Can I just say, before he talks about we know best and the Comhairle would use the money wiser, Harris is particularly a problem situation with regard to affordable housing, as you all know, and depopulation. And I am on the ground. I was at the South Harris Community Council meeting last night. I was at the North Harris Community Council the previous week. And the efforts that's been made, against the backcloth of the obscenity of prices for properties in Luscantire and South Harris and so on, the way forward that many of the trusts and many of the common grazings attached to the various grazings committees is land release at a reasonable price, with various criteria attached about being local, working local, and so on. So there is no, and even a length of time before they can sell up. So you're preventing speculative movements. And the point that was made at all these meetings, I mean, the £50,000 is certainly won't build a house, but it was made quite clearly to me on both these situations of parents of children, of kids that are perhaps working and have got no chance of buying a house in Harris. Make the point, it's very encouraging that the trusts can offer land at reasonable prices. Very encouraging that, and I think Kenny John's been writing to various grazings committees, that the land for a plot is set at a reasonable value. In our own situation, it's around about 5,000 shared equally between the landlord and the grazings committee. Now, that is a reasonable sum of money for a plot. But the point was made quite clearly by a number of parents. And I would think, Councillor McCormick, these people should know. They are on the ground. The point that was made clearly by them is even if there is affordable land on offer, the extra cost of materials still puts it out with the grasp of many people, many young people in Harris. And this £50,000 would be a godsend to many of them to offset the extra material costs borne by us in the islands. So I'm sorry, Councillor McCormick, I do disagree, and on the basis that I'm speaking on a daily basis to people that have children that otherwise would leave the island, but that just might make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. You'll have heard these comments, Angus. Alison MacLeod.
Thank you, Leader. For a second there, I thought the season of goodwill was coming into the chamber early. Normally doesn't even start in December. Could you, just a couple of points on the housing issue? I mean, there are huge issues, and we have talked about this at length. I heard recently of a young couple. They were waiting for 2 years for the Crofters Commission to reallocate a croft to them. They had priced a kit that was £80,000. They've now finally got the croft. They've gone back to supplier. The price is now £160,000. These are the kind of issues we're facing. But can I pick up on 6.2, the 6 point down, Mr. Murray? Ensure that policies aim to retain and attract Gaelic speakers to live and work in Gaelic-speaking communities. Now, I would welcome that, but in this day and age, is that discriminatory? If you're not a Gaelic speaker, will you be, kept out of this handout? I mean, I might be reading that the wrong way around, but I think it's a valid point in this day and age.
An interesting point. Angus, do you want to come back on that particular one? Or would you rather leave it?
Well, thanks, Chair. I think a number of the issues surrounding the bond are going to face some challenging equalities issues. But that line, actually, it's not a line that's in the National Islands Plan, but it is a line that was in the consultation document, and that's why I've incorporated it. But yeah, I take your point, Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you. So good discussion around that. Angus has got more material. Again, if you want to feed into Angus, please do that, members. If not today, then further down the line. But just remember that there's a deadline date next month for submission. Convener?
Thank you, Chair. And my biggest concern is in terms of the amount of money that is coming through for to HHP, and I declare an interest as being a core member on the HHP board. In terms of the amount of money that's coming through over the next 5 years, over £40 million, and it looks as if we are not going to be able to utilise that funding. That money has been allocated to the Western Isles for housing, and I do think there could be an opportunity for us as a council. And I know you've had discussions with HHP leader and Mr. MacLeod as well, having discussions as to what other ways we can provide significant amount of funding to young people for them to purchase, for them to build a house on land that is probably a tenancy of their parent or somebody who's willing to give them a plot of land. I think that's something that we need to do. Otherwise, we will potentially lose a significant chunk of that money, and it may go elsewhere. And I do think, you know, that the conversations that have been had with HHP should assist that, but we do need to keep pushing for that rather than wait for it to be done by somebody else.
Okay, thank you for that. And can you, John MacLeod?
Yeah, just very briefly, Chair, as you know, and we have had discussions with HHP, and they've been quite unambiguous about what they feel they can deliver, and it is nowhere near the resource planning assumption that government have indicated for our programme over the next 5 years. And that is why we need to get flexibility, and that's why a number of letters have been written to government, including a recent one by the leader to Cabinet Secretary. So we look forward to seeing what comes back on that. But if we don't get the flexibility as things stand, it's no use looking to HHP to deliver on that, because they've been very clear that they cannot deliver of that scale.
Correct. Yeah. Do you want to come in, Chief Exec?
Very briefly, I'm picking up a very clear theme from members, and indeed that's reflected in officer contributions through these drafts. And that theme is flexibility. I mean, we are welcoming any initiative which supports population retention and growth, but the point is, and it's coming through many debates today, is that siloed approaches with specific limited funding initiatives are not going to meet the needs, and that is what comes through, particularly in the response to question 5. So that's a point we will make with renewed vigour, I think, following today's meeting.
Thank
you, Chair.
Thank you for that. So there's a recommendation at 3-1. Sorry. Callum Macmillan. Callum, do you want to come back in?
Thank you, Council Leader. It's on point but off topic, and it's to do with the housing. As the convener said, I'll declare an interest as a member of the Euston Housing Group, which was set up out of frustration with the lack of delivery by HHP, and I was also trying to devolve how do we get people to have shared equity so that they have a stake in the place over the next 10 or 15 years, and to devolve the opportunity and the responsibility as close to the ground as possible. And my point here, and I don't know if the Chief Executive might have some scope in his diary, if we could have a get together to see if we can put our various proposals into one which you can take to the Cabinet Secretary, and that is a Comhairle policy or a Comhairle proposal which we can say we have all contributed to this in the round, as it were, as a policy, so that officers have a clear steer on the various points that we're trying to get across, and to empower the people as much as possible rather than the top-down non-delivery that we get at HHP.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's not for this particular consultation response, but it's something that maybe I'll leave with the Chief Executive and the Director of Communities to see if we could maybe arrange a meeting or an informal around that subject.
Yes, Chair, happy to take that on. As you know, you and I are meeting Ms. Robinson, Shona Robson, the Cabinet Secretary, for amongst other matters, housing and local government next week, and we will of course raise these matters in the context that I've mentioned earlier, and taking forward the sentiments expressed at Communities and Housing Committee about the local housing strategy, about the strategic housing investment plan, but emphasising above all that need for funding, which is very welcome, to reflect the needs of the community, which go beyond the narrow parameters of assistance such as is proposed in the island's bond, crofting legislation, private legislation, social housing legislation. It is about population, it is about people and what they need, and those are the points I know we will be taking forward and have been reinforced at this meeting today. I'm sure if members would like a seminar on the subject, we can arrange that before Christmas as part of the series. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay, can we agree the recommendations at paragraph 3.1? Thank you. So we'll move on to finance now. Item 12, first quarter capital monitoring 21-22. It's a report by Norman MacDonald, Head of Accountancy and Exchequer Services. The report's for noting and provides an update on the progress of the 18-23 capital programme as at the end of June this year. The appendix to the report shows the detail at project level on progress of the delivery of the programme. You should also say that work has commenced on the new landfill cell at Benadrove, which seeks to extend the life of the cell by 3 years. Since commencing on site and during the initial phase of the development, the contractor has developed a proposal that could extend the life of the cell by a further 2 years for an additional sum of up to 400,000. The project originally was 4 million. So basically there's a proposal that we spend 10% more to get 66% increase in the life of the cell, and that is recommended for approval for members. I don't know if you want to say anything, Norman. It's just for noting the report.
No, nothing to add, Chair. That was the main change, and there's a report further in the agenda about the Baran Watersay.
Yeah. Okay.
Detailed by Ian earlier on.
So the recommendations there at 3.1. Gordon Murray, Councillor Gordon Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Can I direct members to the Appendix A, first quarter revenue outturn 2021-2022. There's a reference to item 38, CNES earmarked balances. And can I ask who is the designated budget holder? Who's responsible for these earmarked balances, and who's earmarked them, and for what purpose have they been earmarked? Sorry. Oh, sorry, I think I've come in at the revenue. My apologies. My apologies, Chair.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so the recommendation is 3.1 with that particular item, which does seem a no-brainer. Are we happy to agree? Thank you very much. So on to the hotly anticipated item 13, first quarter revenue monitoring. So this report details the forecast revenue outturn for 21-22. A summary of the financial performance to the end of June 2021 is attached at Appendix A, and the forecast outturn shows a projected overspend of £788,000. This mainly relates to an anticipated overspend of £938,000 for health and social care, which will be funded, of course, from the Integrated Joint Board Reserves. There is a projected overspend of £70,000 on bus subsidies, which has been offset by anticipated savings of £150,000 within children's mainland placements and £70,000 vacancy savings within Asset Finance and Resources Directorate. Although there are budget variances across other service areas, these are being managed within overall resources. Departments are currently projected to be within carry-forward tolerances at the end of the year, and commentary on budget performance is included at Appendix C23. The unaudited accounts for 2021 showed that the Council had balances of 2.9 earmarked for the forward budget strategy. With some business plan savings not been achieved, the additional cost of the bus subsidies and other budget variations, this will actually be reduced to 2.4 million by the end of this financial year. The indicative budget for 22-23, agreed as part of the budget set in February 21, will reduce this further to 1.5 million. We really don't want to go any lower than that. So Norman MacDonald is here. Norman, do you want to comment on the report and then take the hotly anticipated questions from Councillor Gordon Murray? You've been given 4 warnings, so we should have a comprehensive answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I don't really have much to add to what you've said yourself, but maybe just to highlight the fact that the pay award for this year still hasn't been agreed. Obviously, we've got some assumptions in the budget for this year and for the next year about pay awards. So anything over and above that is going to obviously add to the pressures. And like you said yourself, we've got only 1.5 million of balances, so it would be wise to hold that and to say it just till we see what happens. And also there's the 1.25% increase in national insurance for the health and social care levy. So that could add another pressure onto our own budget. Obviously, some of that might be funded by the government, but until we have any certainty over that, we need to sort of build it into our budgets as well. So apart from that, I don't have much to say.
Just to confirm that, Cosla, we have presented the case to get that funded, but you're right, as yet that levy it's not been funded by government, and we haven't had confirmation of that. So that could be another exposure. Okay, Gordon Murray, do you want to articulate your question now?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that. Sorry for bringing it in at the wrong place. It was item 38 on the revenue outturn. It's CNES earmarked balances. Just want to ask who's earmarked them and what are they earmarked for? And I've got a second part. Sorry, Chair, if you don't mind me coming.
Right, instalment 1.
Yeah.
Norman.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. The earmarked balances are shown at Appendix B, and there's a variety of things there. Some of them have been agreed by committees previously. The carry forward reports, for example, the departmental carry forwards. There's Crown Estate funding. A lot of it is funding that we've got from the government, but hasn't been spent within the year that we actually got the money. So we earmark it to allow departments to spend it when they are able to. For example, there'll be, as part of the general revenue grant, we get specific items of funding for government initiatives. You know, we might get it at the end of the year.
Yep. So
there's no opportunity to spend it. So we earmark these sums. And some of them, obviously, there's some things there that are ongoing. So there's a variety of things there.
And the second part?
It's just in relation to 3.1C. I've got to say I'm a bit concerned that there's not enough detail on the unachieved savings detailed in paragraph 5.3. So I just want to make a proposal that we maybe omit or take out C and have a report brought back to us on these unachieved savings, what they are, why they weren't achieved, so that in December then we can agree to fund these unachieved savings from balances. I think we need the information. Sorry, if you want to come in.
Thank you, Leader. Just when we go through their performance management at the different committees, invariably under and over performance, as well in service delivery and on a financial level, it's normally reported as well. So that I would imagine would have been clarified in the regular.
Sorry, Councillor MacLeod, I haven't seen it. I would have imagined that it would have come up here because we were making a decision on it. But it's just for information, so councillors know that they've agreed the business plans. I think it was in December. If savings haven't been achieved, it would be kind of very good for councillors to know.
I'm pretty sure they do come through at the performance management reports, but Norman, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. The detail of the savings went to the budget board. Obviously, all members can see that, but it is the kind of document it is. It wasn't easily put in an agenda, so I can share the document with members if that would help.
Thanks. Just to go back to Norman, I checked the budget board papers, and it might have been a verbal update, but it wasn't on the report. But it would be very handy to have them before we make the decision, you know, to fund from balances. I think it's important. It's also good governance as well, I would imagine.
Norman, do you want to give them that information? Or
yes,
members?
I can get information.
That's great. Yeah, quite ready. Okay. Councillor Mitchell.
Hi, John Mitchell, Harrison South Lochs. Thank you, Leader, for letting me in again. I have two concerns too. First of all, I do share the concerns that Councillor Murray has mentioned about maybe putting some meat on the bones with regard to these unachieved savings. And perhaps the reason for that is because we do need a little bit more transparency, because I'm sure many members share with me a fairly grave concern in a matter of 2 or 3 years. We've gone from balances of 2.9 million to 1.5 million. That's almost a 50% drop. And, you know, as I say, I think that we need a greater degree of transparency in the unachieved savings so that we don't find ourselves in another couple of years with virtually zero balances. Thank you, Chair. Leader.
Okay. In terms of the savings that haven't been achieved, can you just give a summary to all members to give more detail and more comfort to Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Murray? Yeah.
Yes, I'll do that.
Good, thank you. Anybody else got any questions or queries on this one? Are we happy to agree the recommendations for approval? Agreed. Thank you. Item 14 is in private. Item 15, do you want to have a break? There's coffee in the lounge. Do you want to have a wee break? 15 minutes? Is that long enough? Okay, 15-minute break. Thank you. Reconvene at 20 past. for the Chief Officer, Health and Social Care. It's looking for approval from members for revised charges for Council Community Care Services effective from 1st April 2021. The report sets out the framework of charges for 21-22 for community care services in the context of COSLA guidance on charging for social work services. The Council agreed, as you recall, in March 2020 that the standard weekly charge for care homes for the elderly under GLOC care home be increased by 5% per annum for the 2021 to 22-23 financial years. Recommendations for approval at paragraph 3.1. I think Kirsty Street. The meeting. Yeah. Kirsty, did you want to comment, or are you just happy to take any questions?
No, I've nothing else to add, but happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Councillor Lucian Robertson.
Kirsty, can I ask you a question in relation to transport to daycare centres? I believe how those attending have to pay themselves now. Is that the case?
There are still a limited amount, limited number of minibuses available in some areas, but the quality of those buses, they're old, and that's something that Muriel and Jack are actually looking at from day services. But people we do have a charging policy, and if people have, for example, the mobility component of disability living allowance or PIP, the expectation is that that's used first. But I am aware of some situations in US that we're looking at on an individual basis.
Yes, I've had some correspondence, Kirsty, from people who are saying that they're having to pay $1.25 a mile to transport over some long distances, which is quite, quite expensive over a month. Can I have maybe a discussion of away from this meeting on this particular?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, can you set up a meeting, Kirsty, with Lucian to maybe go through that subject? Yeah.
But yes, I will do. Yeah.
Thank you. So with that, are we happy to agree the recommendations of paragraph 3.1? Thank you. Item 16 is the Levelling Up Fund, and in particular the transport aspect. It's a report from the Chief Executive. Angus Murray is here and will answer members' questions. The report provides an update on the UK Government's Levelling Up Fund, LUF, progress with the Council's LUF bids and possible sourcing and approval of match funding to support the Council's transport bid. At a special meeting of Policy and Resources Committee on the 9th of June this year, 11 capital bids were recommended for submission to the Levelling Up Fund, but deferred to the second funding round, which was then expected to be in October 2021. These bids represent a total sum of just over 19 million to the LUF. The Tarbert accommodation project was also identified and agreed as the next project that could potentially apply for the balance outstanding of 930,000. The PNR Committee on 9th June 2021 also agreed to defer the submission of a transport bid of between 20 and 50 million to the Levelling Up Fund's second funding round. Whilst there may be slippage in terms of the anticipated October 21 date, a bid of up to 50 million at future funding round would require match funding of up to 5 million, which realistically can only come from external sources at the minute. T&I Committee, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, have made an additional recommendation that South Ford be included in the projects listed at T2, critical road links in the appendix to the report. This is, as I said, discussed at T&I. Angus, do you want to add anything to the report in front of you, or Malcolm? Well, Malcolm first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just very briefly, the point that's made about the match funding, which would be required, is an important one. I don't think it should halt these recommendations in any way, but the Corner must be clear as to the commitment that we're making, which is if our whole bid was to be successful, quite substantial. We would seek, of course, that from external funding, but if that wasn't successful, we would be looking at committing either the capital programme or doing more prudential borrowing, or both, and just so that the committee is aware of that commitment that we're making. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny John McLeod.
Just for the record, I would declare an interest in the item at T5, which in T4, beg your pardon. Barbara's Estate Camper Van Park as a director of the.
That's fine. And Councillor Paul Finnegan.
Thanks, Chair. Not a member of your committee. Just that you're saying there's a 930 underspend. Is it possible that the accommodation facility in Tab actually can be included now? If there is a shortage of money and with an opportunity for maybe to find match funding, maybe the group can help to find some match funding as well. I don't know if that's possible, but it's just maybe just try to push the thing on a bit, instead of if there is underspend.
I'm not clear on what you're saying there, Councillor Finnegan. The bids as they are at 19,070,000 and the 930 to bring it up to 20 million, 930 balance is agreed as the priority for Tarbert accommodation. What are you asking us to do?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. I wasn't certain if it actually been. I know the 930 is whether the actual project had actually been put forward. Then in that case.
Okay, that's fine. I get Colleen McKeever to clarify, or Angus Murray, just to clarify directly with you on the position on that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, members happy to agree the recommendation of paragraph 3.1 and additional recommendation from T&I committee. Thank you. Item 17, Marine Scotland. Sorry, Grant, I missed you there. Grant Fulton.
Thanks, Leader. I just wanted to declare an interest in the housing accommodation project as my name was associated with the application in my previous role with Harris Development Limited.
Okay,
thank you.
That's fine. Thank you for that. Okay, on to item 17, Marine Scotland funding, first-time vessel owners and bridging loans. This is a report from Joe McPhee, Head of Economic Development and Planning. The report provides an update on bridging loan proposals in connection with the Marine Scotland funding scheme for first-time vessel owners. It was reported to the Council in June 2021 that the Scottish Government announced support for assisting younger new entrants into first-time vessel ownership as part of the Future Fisheries Management Strategy 2020 to 2030. This positive development will complement efforts to modernise the fleet and create jobs. Regrettably, the Royal Bank of Scotland has indicated that it is unwilling to assist with the bridge of grant funding in respect of applications to the Marine Scotland scheme. Following initial discussion with the Chief Executive and the Head of Accountancy and Exchequer Services, Norman MacDonald, it's proposed that the Council agree in principle to short-term bridging loan support, subject to all other conditions being met by the applicant. And this requirement of the fund is identified as a maximum of £480,000. Joe McPhee is here to answer any members' questions, but I think it's a good initiative by us, and I think we should do whatever we can do in order to support business development and jobs. Joe, do you want to add?
Nothing to add, Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Take it, we're happy to agree the recommendations in the report.
Agreed.
Did you, Chief Exec?
Yes, Chair, I think it's fair to say that Mr MacDonald and I were cautious about this, as you would imagine, but otherwise this very successful scheme will simply not be able to proceed, and that would be very regrettable. Yeah. So that's why these recommendations are before you.
Thank you. Okay, agreed. Item 18, procurement, cleansing services fleet replacement. The report is asking the Council approval for the replacement of vehicles associated with cleansing services through prudential borrowing. Cleansing and waste management related duties require reliable vehicles to ensure efficient service delivery. Some of the cleansing fleet are now reaching the end of the useful working life and required to be replaced. And the recommendations there for approval are paragraph 3.1, fairly straightforward. Happy to agree. Thank you. Item 19, adult day services, like similar idea, vehicle purchase. It's seeking homologation of the decision to purchase a vehicle for adult day services through prudential borrowing. Purchase will be funded by prudential borrowing of $6,236 per annum for 5 years from the existing adult day services transport budget. Happy to agree the recommendation, homologate that.
Chairman.
Sorry, Ray McKenzie.
Thank you. Does this have a lift on the vehicle? I take it doesn't, from the report. And would it require a lift?
Jack Libby or Jack, are you there? Did you get that question?
I did, Chair, thank you, and I'm happy to get back later on today with an answer to that question.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Jack. Happy to agree the recommendations, folks. Thank you. Thank you. That's fine, Jack. Item 20 is a capital programme, was referred to earlier on by Ian McKinnon. It's a report by the Chief Exec and Ian, Director for Investment Delivery. It provides an update on the progress of the Barra and Battersea Community Campus project. Hub North Scotland Limited gave notice in the first week of July that they were no longer in a position to finalise and publish the revised cost plan by the agreed milestone due to emergent costs being significantly higher than expected, as we've heard about earlier on in terms of housing. An outline cost plan issued in mid-July 2021 indicated a significant increase in both project costs and the delivery programme. To continue with moving the project forward in a positive direction, which we all support, it was agreed by the Project Executive Board in July 2021 that 3 main elements of work should be taken forward. Firstly, undertake a project reassessment exercise comprising a review of the campus design, construction methodology, cost and delivery programme. Secondly, a review of the key strategic drivers and decisions. And thirdly, a review of project governance and management arrangement. Detail of the currently ongoing reassessment exercise scheduled for completion by the end of November are provided in the body of this report in front of us. Further detail is provided in the report regarding the respective positions of the NHS Western Isles Board and the Western Isles IJB. And in the meantime, it's recommended that the Council confirm its continuing commitment to the project and its strategic drivers. And as far as I'm concerned, that hasn't been in doubt. Ian McKinnon and Malcolm Burr will answer members' questions and their recommendations for approval. Ian, did you want to speak to this?
Well, coupled with what's already in the report in your own briefing there, I don't really have very much more to add, but sure Malcolm and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Quite a comprehensive report. Councillor Kenny John MacLeod.
Thank you very much, Leader. Just really to reflect back, there was a substantial funding gap to find with the earlier figures that we're talking about. This is certainly not making the position any better, in fact, significantly worse. I'm wondering at what stage will there be clarity from government as to the level of intervention they're prepared to come in at? Because hacking away at the project itself to try and make it fit an envelope that we really don't know the size or scope of it must be very difficult at this stage, and you wouldn't want to pull back to the extent that what we're all trying to achieve with the integration of all these services and all the benefits to the community, that would be put at risk. So I'm just wondering at where are we positioned in terms of the lack of clear commitment on the level of funding from government, and how is that frustrating the progress with the development?
Okay, can I ask Chief Executive to comment first?
Thank you, Chair. Those are very good points, and part of the reason for the reaffirmation, which, as the Chair has noted, has never been in doubt from the Comhairle, but it's important that government is aware of the commitment of all the parties to this project. Having reassessed the costing of it, we have to go to government with those reassessed costs. I think otherwise government would say, well, you have to look at your own commitments, you have to look at what this project is there to deliver, you have to look at any adjustments, you have to look at any savings, you have to look at any repositioning, all of these things, and then we will look at our commitment. So that's the process. So once this process is through, the project will be resubmitted to the various elements of Scottish Government, and we've set up a process for that with the support of Scottish Futures Trust. And then, yes, it will require a decision one way or the other as to what funding commitment government will give, because, as you know, our own capital programme is utterly and completely committed, and NHS, of course, follows a different process. Ian McKinnon will put that in better terms in terms of the process, but this is the necessary part before we can go to government to ascertain its funding and political commitment.
But what we won't be doing, just to use your own phrase, Kenny John, hacking at it, we won't be doing is reducing it to something that doesn't resemble what we wanted. Our ambitions are still quite high, and I think that what we're coming back with is a more concrete and realistic proposal, and then we'll go to government and see what they'll contribute. Can I take in Ray and then take in Ian? Ray?
Thank you. Not on your committee. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's just that it seems to be never ending this, and I don't know. I certainly understood at the beginning that the government thought this was a great idea and it's unusual. There was a template for other places and all the rest of it. The council, the health board, everybody seems to be, everybody seems to be, in favour of it. But sort of division within the island itself, is this a matter of two competing bodies or difference of opinions as to, whether is that the real problem?
No, the issue at the minute is the cost. There is a debate locally around particular layouts, etc. But that is not the issue at the minute. Is the cost that has escalated to an extraordinary degree in the first half of this year, and that's the issue at the minute. So the aspiration is the same. Government certainly, as you said, we're very supportive of it. We are supportive of it. And I think any of these concerns that you're talking about, or differences within the community, there'll be an opportunity as we look at it again here to incorporate these as well, so that people are reassured that they're getting what they want and what suits the project. So no, the issue is money at the minute, and that's where we need to re-engineer it and go back to government. Take it from there.
Can I come back?
Yes, Ray.
Yeah. So in the event, the unfortunate event that the money aspect becomes too much, could it end up with having two separate projects, as maybe some people had originally suggested?
Well, I wouldn't like to second guess what the outcome will be. So we'll work on that aspiration at the minute and take that and complete that exercise, see if there's government support and adjust accordingly thereafter. I'm seeing Councillor Manford. Donald Manford, do you want to come in just now, Donald?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm very, I have to say, I'm very encouraged by your introduction and your comments around it so far, relating to where exactly it is, and I thank you for that. I've got 2 or 3 points, so I'll just fling them all in at once and let you come back as you feel it's necessary. I'm entirely in agreement with the proposal set out at 2.4. In relation to the third bullet point, it's indeed necessary. It is necessary to review project governance. The type of thing I'm trying to understand the comments that we've heard on from yourself, Ian, quite correctly, about the parts of the project governance that were working and the parts of the project governance that were weak or weren't working. One of the areas, for example, is the stakeholder group. Stakeholders very valuable. That's what I thought. Well, indeed, we all at the outset of this thought this was an excellent way of addressing complex issues. If I might, just as an example, look at the school. We have the stakeholder group, councillors, to my knowledge, hadn't done this, and that's fine when it wasn't looked to be. A parent council, staff, working through the issues, which I understand were coming through well. However, there is now appears to be disagreement with other staff members who are through their union representatives. How did this come about? I don't expect you to answer this now, but we really need to understand why and how these discussions aren't working together. And I acknowledge that you are raising it, that it's part of this report, a very good report. But I would also look to try and understand, have some insight into how all this came about or why it's not being resolved. The campaigners locally say that this review that this report is about is the pause that was called for in the petition. Is that the understanding of the project directors? I've no problem if it is, but it would be valuable to understand it or to have it cleared at the beginning and not creeping up later. 7.2, the fifth bullet point, the primary and long-standing issue is a continued fear that the units for extra care will not provide the care which the care home presently does. This has been raised as far back as 2012. I was largely part of that anxiety myself, and that has never gone away. I'm pleased that is now being addressed as part of this review. It's something that's gone on far too long. Whatever the merits or demerits of the units for extra care, the community is not and has not been persuaded that the loss of the elements of the services that will be delivered through the care home will be anything other than a gap. And that is a continued fear. There are, as we would expect, a number of very important points in this paper which merit deeper examination. And I accept this may not be, the committee may not be the forum for getting into the detail of that. And for that, I would value the opportunity of a meeting with the appropriate officers, preferably with the four ward councillors and anybody else who would want to engage in it. But I think with ourselves, the elected members, it would be valuable to meet, to get through the detail of what's contained in what is a very, very good report. To conclude, I entirely agree with the comments set out at 7.5, and as you referred to yourself, Chair, and it's reflected correctly in 3.1b of the report's recommendation. And I would be happy to support, well, I'm not a member of your committee, I should have said at the outset, but I hope that is, I look forward to those recommendations being accepted. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I mean, we won't go into the 2 or 3 things you raised there. I'm sure we can confirm. I'm sure the officers can easily arrange and facilitate a meeting to go into more detail and include the 4 members. I'm sure Mr. McKinnon will be happy to facilitate that. In terms of the project governance, you raised that issue, and I don't know if we need to go into detail on that one. Perhaps that's best kept for such a meeting rather than going through it now. Maybe if Ian wants to comment, he can. And the other aspect was the care aspect, and I wonder if the Chief Executive can maybe comment on that. Mr. Manford raised the issue about extra care housing and the...
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to assist and happy to arrange a meeting with all ward members as requested. The project is paused inevitably because of for the financial reasons which are set out in the report, and it was on that basis that the project board, and I declare my interest as chair of that or co-chair of that body, sought a review, as paragraph 7.3 says, of the key strategic drivers for the project and sought that affirmation from all parties, because it is some time since some of these matters were considered. On the housing with extra care aspect, as Councillor Manford and the other ward members know, I attended a number of meetings in Barra in July, and I'm aware of the community's feelings, or some parts of the community's feelings about the lack of a care home model. And as part of this review and as part of the questions which are set out in 7.2, We have asked the parties to look at these questions. The answer to them will unequivocally be yes, but it is time for that reaffirmation to take place. And amongst those parties are the Integration Joint Board, under whose authority, as it were, we the Comhairle are delivering that part of the project, and the IJB will consider a report which sets out the arguments about housing with extra care and care homes. I'm not qualified to address these points, but it, as part of this process, will look at that as well. So it is important at this stage, as we look at the increased costs, that we say to government and ourselves and the communities that we have looked at this again. We are reaffirming that this is the best model of service provision for Barra and Battersea for all these reasons, and here are the arguments which support that contention.
Okay, Ian, did you want to say anything?
Well, I certainly wouldn't make any more comment on the model of care. Malcolm's picked it up exactly how we're planning to take it forward. In terms of Councillor Manford's other points, first of all, the community stakeholder advisory group was a very good forum. It was very important we got the right representative bodies and around the table. Unfortunately, the one and only meeting that we've had of that forum was back in April, and further scheduling of that forum has been difficult because of the reassessment exercise that's ongoing. But in the meantime, we have kept regular updates through Guvarai, and in fact there will be one based on the outcomes of this meeting this morning in Guvarai at the end of this week for the wider public. In terms of revised arrangements going forward, and mention was made of what we see works and what we see doesn't work, I think the community stakeholder advisory group falls into the former category. It worked well when it was held, and we would seek feedback from those people who are involved in that forum as to how we could further improve it. I should also say that I provide regular updates to the Barra and Battersea Economic Regeneration Forum when it meets as well. The second point that I think he made was around schools and engagement with parents' councils, and we have involved the parents' councils. The head teachers are key stakeholders in the project, and one of the things that we are aware of is that colleagues in Education and Children's Services will be looking to use the new school as a means of implementing what's called pedagogical change, which is different approaches to teaching and learning. And I think not unnaturally there'll be some teaching staff in the school who might have some concerns about that. And for that reason, ourselves in the delivery team and Willie MacDonald and Mary Clare are organising a visit to a number of schools on the mainland. I think we're talking about Oban, Perth, Edinburgh and Jedburgh, for representatives from the school, ranging from teaching staff, parents' councils, etc., to see what benefits the new approach to teaching and learning could bring, and also the fabric, the built environment that enables that to happen. We had hoped to organise that meeting or that series of visits before the October break, but because of the situation with COVID in the schools, it was decided to leave that until after October. But in any event, I think it will go a long way to persuade staff and parents that what we're proposing is the right way forward. The third point was whether this assessment is a pause. I don't, choice of words and all that, but certainly it does give us an opportunity to reflect on the views from the community that came in from the online campaign. And a lot of the layouts that we're now working on take on board as much as possible some of the concerns from within the community, notwithstanding the fact that probably the key concern relates to the model of care, which we've already talked about already. And just to complement what Malcolm said in terms of a meeting with 4 elected members, we've got a meeting of the Project Executive Board tomorrow afternoon, I'm quite happy to liaise with Malcolm's office to provide the 4 members with that update following on tomorrow's board meeting, maybe even next week or the week after.
Right, thank you for that additional information. Ian, Councillor Portsteel, did you want to come in, Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just thanks to Ian. It'll be good to get that meet-up arranged. Whether by intention or not, I think we have an opportunity now, whether it's a pause or not a pause, but to reassess and have a look. And just want to back up what Councillor Manford and what Malcolm was saying about the housing with extra care and the care home model. I think it's something that we've looked at and talked about quite a bit. And I think we've got the experience of what's happening up at Goat Hill to draw upon, and anything that's been thrown in the mix there. I think it's worth reflecting on what's happening and using that to our advantage in Castleby. So thank you.
Okay, so with that additional information and these plans going forward in terms of sharing information and meeting again, are we happy to agree the recommendation for approval at paragraph 3.1? Great, thank you very much. Item 21, place-based investment programme about the Leverborough Port of Entry. This is a report again by Joe McPhee, Head of Economic Development and Planning. The report concerns the allocation of the Scottish Government's place-based investment programme Capital Fund 21-22 to support the regeneration of Leverborough Port of Entry. Leverborough is a key port of entry and place for island visitors experiencing the Outer Hebrides, a gateway for a range of marine tourism-related activities, as well as having an active commercial fishing fleet. The area has been identified for some time as a priority for environmental improvement and enhancements, and more recently has deteriorated significantly with regular issues and complaints received in relation to traffic management for pier access, parking, security and signage. Joe McPhee will answer any members' questions. I think it might have gone through TNI, this one. There's a recommendation for approval at 3.1, and I just want to suggest that the Council make the award conditional on formal agreement being reached with other pier users and stakeholders in relation to the proposed improvements and enhancements, including maintenance, including ongoing maintenance, so that whilst we do the spend, we encourage all involved in that particular facility to support it and agree to support it going forward, rather than just improve one section of it and the rest of it remains in disrepair. Councillor John Mitchell.
John Mitchell, Harrison South Lochs. Thanks for letting me in again, Leader. First of all, on behalf of the Leverborough Pier Users Group, I'd like to thank the committee and the council for the allocation, albeit I'd have to look at the strings attached to it, but I mean, I think the appreciation is there for the award. Councillor Fulton and I, en route to the South Harris Community Council meeting last night, took the opportunity to go round the pier at Leverborough, and it's in some state. I mean, it really is, if I can choose, especially it's an SH1 T-hole. It really is. It is awful. And in fact, the word on the street is that this money is, hopefully it may attract some match funding, but even then it's recorded by members of the users group as a drop in the ocean. And we'll look at Tarbert, which is really coming on. It's looking rather smart. And I think once all the building work's done, it's going to be a very, very smart port of entry and exit, in considerable contrast to the mess in Leverborough. So basically, I mean, Councillor Mackenzie said something which was half in jest, half in earnest, when he says he thinks the last investment was Lord Leverhulme to the Leverborough Pier. It looks very much like it. And all I'm suggesting really is that, I mean, Councillor Fulton and I have encouraged the users group to continue the fight, because this can only be perceived as the start. And they really do need real monies, major investment, in order to turn this diabolical situation around. So all I'm saying is that thank you, and I would hope that in the future, as and when major investment requests are placed before the council, they will view it very favourably. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. John, Grant, did you want to come in?
Thanks, Leader. Just a quick one, just to say very much warmly welcome this and thanks for Mr McPhee's work on the paper. I think anyone that's travelled through Leverborough can recognise the issues there. So hopefully this will be a catalyst for further development in the area, and I'm quite sure that the community groups in the area will grasp this and take it on. So I've got no issues there. So yeah, just to say thanks for this investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fulton. That's the word I'd scribbled on my own notes, a catalyst. I hope it will be a catalyst for improvement long term and significant. Councillor Finnegan.
Thanks, Chair. Not a member of your committee. Just to echo my colleagues' views. Yeah, it's a start, but it's it's very important that we now push on South Harris because historically it's been neglected quite considerably. So it's welcome, but we need to do more. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm sure Euston Barra members will welcome it too, as they have to travel through it so often. So are we happy to agree the recommendation as I read it? Okay, thank you. Joe, I didn't bring you in, but I didn't need to bring you in. You're getting praised.
Very happy, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Item 22, human trafficking and exploitation policies. A report looking for approval for human trafficking and exploitation policy for the council. It's appended to the report. It aims to inform employees of forms and indicators of human trafficking and their responsibility to address any suspected instances encountered during the course of their work. I think did Carmen respond to any members' questions? Norma, sorry, Norma, it is Norma. Anybody got any questions for Norma? Quite happy to agree the policy. Thank you. Thanks for that. Item 23, health and safety policy. Looking for approval for a revised health and safety policy. It's appended. It sets out the council's duties and details the overall framework of health and safety. The policy has been recommended for approval by the JCC. And if members don't have any questions, are we happy to approve? Thank you. The next item, 24, is the Platinum Jubilee Holiday. It's a report providing details of the proposed arrangements for the Platinum Jubilee Holiday on the 3rd of June this year. A number of options have been considered by the corporate management team, with the preferred option being allocation of an additional annual leave day on the 3rd of June this year and closure of office buildings. Employees in frontline services unable to take this day would be able to take leave another time. The trade unions have been consulted through the JCC and are in agreement with offering an additional day's leave, and the local negotiating committee for teachers has been unable to meet as yet, and therefore the position for schools and teaching employees will be reported at a later meeting. Are members happy to agree this recommendation? Councillor Charlie Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report, and I would suggest another recommendation to the report, 311 or 312 as such. Recommendation being that the British flag should be flown at schools and CNES offices in Castlewood, Ballyvannick, Tarbert and Stornoway as a recognition of the Queen's service and in celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Day.
Mr. Burr, any issue with that? Or?
Well, Chair, we have a policy on the flying of flags which is due for review, and probably would be reviewed before this event. So we could look at the matter then, in addition to what Councillor Nicholson has proposed, because there is a review due, and that with luck will go to the December series.
Leader, can I come back, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Chief Executive, for the point that you put forward. But we're in the council just now, and we have already made a decision earlier in this period where when our good team Scotland were playing in the European Championship, the schools and other areas around the islands put up the flag during that time to support the team in their endeavours. And I would like to see the same here for this holiday in relation to the Queen's service in our community. And I think the decision should be made here, Chair, as such. We don't need to wait until we revise the policy. This is a decision that we can make, Chair.
Chair, just to point out, no decision was taken as to flying any flags in terms of our policy to mark Scotland's presence in the delayed European Championships. That was a decision for the Nicholson Institute, and one that it was entitled to make in terms of its own policy. We don't manage schools' flag flying policies, and we did not take any decision in terms of our own, because that is not events like that are not covered by such matters. But
has anybody got any issue with adding that recommendation? No. No. Okay.
Excuse me, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, but I take it that Queen Elizabeth I of Scotland would be quite happy with a Saltire being flown. And if we could have the Queen's personal standard, if that's what we're looking at, because it's the difference here between the head of state and the flag of the United Kingdom. And if we're looking to give a mark of respect to our head of state, we could do it by flying the personal standard or the line rampant, or which is her personal standard in Scotland, or the flag of the Saltire, because she is Queen Elizabeth I of Scotland. So that would be my view on that. Thank you, Council Leader.
Thank you. Has anybody got any issue with flying the Union Jack? Adding that as a recommendation? No problems. Can we add as a recommendation? You can come back to us if there's any particular technical reason why we cannot do it, but we'll add it as a recommendation.
Indeed, Chair.
Okay.
It's as part of the review of the flag flying policy, we would probably be looking at events such as these, but it's probably covered by the fact that there may well be a direction from both UK and Scottish governments that flags be flown to mark the occasion, so it may be unnecessary, but I'll include it in the review of the policy.
We agree that then? Ray Mackenzie?
I'm not disagreeing with anything. I just wanted to slip in, since we were talking about flags, is it possible to look at having a flag for the Western Isles? I did show the Chief Executive a number of years ago a flag which was designed by a former sheriff, which I thought was very good. But I think, ideas could be, I don't know, a competition in the school or something like that, in schools.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you want to raise that.
Everybody else seems to
pardon
have
the pun.
one.
You can raise that somewhere else. I don't think we'll add it in as part of the recommendation for this, because this is specifically about. But maybe we can revisit that in an informal.
Yes, I think that's probably the best venue for that debate.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks for flagging that up, Ray. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 25, Regional Economic Partnership, a report by the Director for Communities. The report provides an overview of developing proposals for the Highlands and Islands Regional Economic Partnership. The Convention of the Highlands and Islands agreed that HIE should undertake initial work to scope out and put in place terms of reference for a Highlands and Islands Regional Economic Partnership. HIE subsequently facilitated a set of discussions with local authority leaders and developed an initial terms of reference. We've gone through that, several iterations of that, to arrive at the present draft, which is outlined in Appendix 1. There are recommendations for approval at paragraph 3.1 of the report, and members are invited to appoint a member and a substitute member to the Regional Economic Partnership. And I would move that the Council, as we did with the other economic matter, appoint myself as leader of the Council as a member and the Chair of Economic Development onto the Regional Economic Partnership. Are you happy to agree these recommendations? Thank you. Agreed. And the final item in public is reports outstanding for noting. Happy to note. Okay, we now go into private for item 14.